Good day, my dear learners. You are welcome to today's virtual class. My name is Dr. S.A. Sule, your course facilitator for EDM 211. The title of the course is History of Education in Nigeria, beginning from 1842 to 1960. The course has 10 study sessions, and they are all clearly outlined in your study module. Today's discussion is centered on the study session 1, which is titled the African Traditional Education, ATE. African Traditional Education is equally known as the African Indigenous Education. Learning outcomes. When you have carefully studied this session, you should be able to define the concept of African Traditional Education, list and explain 4 goals of the African Traditional Education and the contents of the African Traditional Education, enumerate the methods used and then the characteristics of the African Traditional Education. Finally, you should be able to identify any 4 advantages and disadvantages of the African Traditional or Indigenous Education. Introduction. As you all know, every society, whether simple or complex, has its own system of training and educating its young ones. Education for better life has been one of the most persistent concerns of human beings throughout history. However, the goals of education, the method of approach may differ from place to place, nation to nation, people to people, based on the needs, aspirations, and peculiarity of the society. In the African context, the warrior, the hunter, the nobleman, the man of character was adjourned to be a well-educated and a well-integrated citizen of his community. Okay? Now the concept of African traditional education. African traditional education or African indigenous education as it is equally called is the traditional method or means through which the various cultures and cultural practices and traditions in the society are passed on to the younger ones in the society without any foreign interference, without any foreign influence. It is simply the traditional system of education, this traditional system of educating the young ones, integrating them into the society. Okay? In Nigeria, it was a system of education in practice before the advent or the arrival of Islam. Christian missionaries, and even the colonialists. Hence, indigenous education is as old as man. It is worthy of note that it is of 2 categories, namely informal and non-formal. What are the goals of the African traditional education? Generally, cultural preservation and transmission of the valued or cherished societal culture or cultural heritage, norms, and beliefs from generation to generation are the fundamental goals of ATE. However, specific goals include development of the child's physical skills, development of character, inculcation of respect for elders and those in position of authority, development of intellectual skills, acquisition of specific vocational training skills, and development of a healthy attitude towards honest labor, development of a sense of belongingness and active participation in family and community affairs, understanding, appreciation, and promotion of the cultural heritage of the community at large. All these are the goals, specific goals of the African traditional education. What about the contents? The content areas of ATE. In fact, the content are so wide. African traditional education covers so expansive areas. but a few of them include the following. The language of the environment, that is the first thing the child learns. And it is a content because it's being tutored, it's being mentored, it's being taught how to learn, how to speak the language of the environment, otherwise known as the mother tongue or L1. Even the dressing pattern is also a content of the ATE. Religious practice, African traditional religion, mainly, anyway, okay? Cooking and eating habit, greeting system. We have different types of greeting for different occasions and different times. In the morning, we have different greeting from that of the afternoon and also that of the evening. When something happens to someone celebrating, we have a different type of greeting. And when somebody is in a moody situation, maybe somebody lost a close one, morning, we have a particular system of greeting for such, circumstance. Okay, marriage ceremonies is another content area of ATE. Chieftaincy, coronation, burial ceremonies, tool for pursuing desirable economic activities such as hoe, how to fabricate farming implements and other, hunting, tools. All these were being done by our forefathers, the native. Okay, they all form part of the contents of ATE. Morality, what is good and what is bad, you are being taught as a child. The knowledge of the physical environment, when the sun is likely to rise, when the sun is likely to set in, when rain is likely to fall, when in fact, all these are things that the younger ones are being taught by the elders. Social club and organizations, proverbs, taboos, entertainment, music, drumming, dances, and costumes, all these form part of the African traditional education content areas. Even craft, tie and dye, basket weaving, carpentry, blacksmithing, dressmaking, clay work such as molding, and even animal rearing, farming, fishing, hunting, shooting, and even hairdo. In fact, they are so numerous that we cannot, exhaust them. All these form part of the contents of the African traditional education. Method used in the teaching or learning of ATE. Basically, two methods are involved, namely direct and indirect method. Under direct method, we have dialogue, we have instruction, we have reward, we have even punishment. Social ceremonies, apprenticeship, participation, indoctrination, play, imitation, observation, oral literature, etc., etc., tale by moonlight. All these form under direct method, through which we learn all those contents that we had already highlighted earlier. Then indirect method is another, method through which we acquire African traditional education, or we teach to the younger ones. In fact, through indirect method, we have the following: riddles and joke, proverbs, folk tales, in fact, storytelling, oral literature, etc., etc. Sometimes in certain situations, the two methods are, combined simultaneously to, transmit knowledge and, information, vital information to the younger ones. Okay, characteristics of ATE. Generally, ATE has, innumerable characteristics. One, a few of these, basic characteristics include mother tongue or language of the environment is used as medium of instruction. You don't need to learn how to speak English to impart ATE. No, the child is born into the environment. The language of the environment is used as a medium of instruction. Whatever you have to pass to the child, whatever information, it is the language of the environment inquiry that particular child is born into, okay? And by so doing, it makes it easier for the child to understand and even for the teacher to, pass the message. Even though there are no designated teachers, the elders around are usually the teachers. Okay, some corrective measure or disciplinary measures are brutal in nature. Sometimes punishment method on a child may not be proportional to the offense committed. So sometimes very brutal in nature. Okay, it's one of the fundamental characteristics of AT. It is a communal responsibility. Everybody is involved. There is no special origin time fixed for instruction. Indigenous education lacks documentation. In fact, it lacks documentation, perhaps because how to read and write is a problem because it is associated with illiteracy. And when it lacks documentation like that, everybody, tend to tell, stories. In fact, information, education is transmitted. Knowledge is transmitted through oral, literature. So sometimes the version you are told may not be the same version the other person is told. So how to even believe the authenticity of whatever you have been told may become a problem. In fact, that serves as one of the disadvantages, which we shall discuss later. It is also associated with illiteracy, as there is no form of reading or writing involved. It lacks certification. Unlike the modern system of education or the Western education, where at the end of the school, term or upon graduation, you are certificated. African traditional education is not like that. It lacks certification. Age is no barrier to learning. Okay, there is no dropout case. There is no dropout case as learning is continuous. Is continuous. It's a long life affair. Okay, it lacks dynamism. It lacks dynamism because it is conservative. It cannot be. In fact, it is conservative. Okay, some aspects of indigenous education are restrictive and secretive, are only made known to some certain group of people, particularly the Egungun aspect is known, made known. The secrecy involved is made known to the elders in the community alone. Okay, and sometimes the women are not carried along, they are not involved in some aspect of African traditional education. There is no special class of people known as teacher for the purpose of general education. Everybody is a teacher. Okay, when a child does something wrong, something that is not consistent to the norms of the society, you correct him. As you correct him at that point, you have served as his teacher. Okay, it lacks designated venue for instruction. It is superstitious. Sometimes it is based on superstition. When something happens, I say, no, as I'm going, in fact, where I am going to, I will not, because I have hit my leg, my left leg on the stone, I will not, it is a bad omen. So you can see, it is based on superstition, okay? Advantages of the African traditional education. In fact, it has numerous advantages. Some of them include the following: developing a sense of commitment in the people. It also fosters unity among the people as everybody group together to, do community, activities without any social, or class distinction. Okay, emphasis on character training made for a sane society of people with high moral standard. In fact, that emphasis for or on character training made it for a sane society. Then, unlike now that there is social decadence, moral decadence, social vices here and there, before then, it was not as prevalent as what we see now, because then character training was most emphasized. It was most emphasized. It was most emphasized. Okay, communication was done in the mother tongue. That was the only medium of communication. No foreign language as we have today. Sometimes, in fact, now as we are, most of our children can hardly speak their mother tongue. So, in fact, foreign, culture has overtaken our original culture, which shouldn't be so. Okay, anything that has advantage must equally have a disadvantage. So, what are the disadvantages of African traditional education? It is conservative in nature, which means creativity is often suppressed. The child is not given freedom of expression and choice of profession. Age and tradition are overemphasized. Freedom of expression is almost non-existent. Sometimes you say, who are you to tell me this? I am older than you are, so you cannot direct me. Because a child cannot question an adult. It is seen, such a child is seen as disrespectful child, which do not, you know, which which does not, you know, which does not go along with the norms of the society. Okay, there is no proper documentation of events due to inability to read and write. And when such happens, the oral transmission you get from different sources, you may hardly authenticate the true situation. Okay, there is no division of labor as one person performs so many roles, such as being a teacher, being a judge, being a craftsman, and so on and so forth. Okay, in summary, in summary, in this study session one, you have learned the concept of African traditional education. You have equally learned the goals of African traditional education and the contents of African traditional education. You equally learn the method used and then the general characteristics of African traditional education. And finally, we learned advantages and disadvantages associated with African traditional education. Self-assessment questions for study session one. Self-assessment. Now that you have completed the study session one, you can assess how well you have achieved its learning outcomes by answering the following questions. Question one, what is African traditional or African indigenous education? This particular question tests learning outcome one. Okay, describe the method used in the teaching and learning of African traditional education and highlight the general characteristics of African traditional education. This particular study session, study session 3, test or measures learning outcome 3. Finally, identify any 3 each, the advantages and disadvantages of the African indigenous or African traditional education. This learning self-study question 4, self-assessment question 4, measures or test learning outcome 4 of the study session 1. Thank you very much for your audience and have a blessed moment. Thank you.